Welcome, everyone. Today we have a guest on our show. We have with us Anuradha Goyal, who is the author of IndiTales, one of India's oldest travel blogs. I met her on Twitter and I read her book Lotus in the Stone, and I've had some very interesting conversations with her. She's very well traveled across India and she has a lot of knowledge on Indian scriptures. In this podcast, we're going to discuss how to travel India for both Indians and for foreigners, what the best places are, how much it costs, and what things you should keep in mind. And just a quick note before we begin. Throughout the podcast, I'm going to address Anuradha by her first name, even though she is much older than I am. This is simply for the comfort of an international audience. So let's begin. Welcome, Anuradha. How are you doing today?
Namaste, Harsh. I'm very good and I hope you're having a great time.
I'm doing quite well. I've been looking at your Twitter account and your blog, and it is quite impressive. I actually like the content very much. I do think that everyone listening to us today is going to find your content super interesting. So, why don't you start with telling us a bit about what you've been doing and your journey?
Thank you for those kind words. My journey is a journey of what I called a series of experiments. So I studied computer science, physics, worked in IT industry for a long time, and I grew up in India in various places because my father worked in the defense. Worked in the IT industry, and while I was working there, I started experiment with blogging. Blogging was just a new tool, and I was just experimenting with it, writing random things like what I did on the weekend, I reviewing books that I read, not even reviewing, writing my reflections on the books I was reading, and writing about all the travels I was doing, primarily during weekends those days, but otherwise as well. Over a period of time, it got developed into two very, very strong blogs, which is IndiTales, which is the travel blog, and my personal website where I have the book reviews and my newspaper columns and all the other things that I feel like writing about, where I have some thoughts to share with the world. It was all organic. I started at a time when people did not know what blogging is. People did not know what the future of the blogging would be. That would come probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years after I started. I started in 2004, and the commercialization of blogs started sometime in 2012, 13, 11, 12, 13, around that time. And in the beginning, it was not really the monetization the way we monetize today. The monetization models evolved over a period of time. So it has been a series of experiments, a bit of following your heart, a bit of doing what you want to do and seeing the impact of that on the world. I would say in overall today, I'm in an enviable position. A lot of people would like to be in my shoes, where all you do is read, write, and travel, or travel and then read and then write, or whichever sequence you put it in, a circle or a triangle of reading, writing, and traveling.
That's actually a very creative and envious position to be in. I do agree with you there. It's super interesting that you started in 2004. 2004 was really the early era of the internet. And for people who don't remember, this was before Facebook, social media, and things of that sort. So, how did you persevere for so many years, especially at a time where you were not making money writing? Was it truly a passion, or were you forward thinking that this is going to be a big business in the future?
Okay, so let me tell you, I was doing very well in my IT career, and which I had started working in around the time I was 22, 23, after my college placement. And when I had joined that industry, in my head, I had decided that I will quit when I'm 35. And after that, I'll do whatever I feel like doing. And I must build my financial base by the time I'm 35. And that is exactly what I did. I built my basic base. I'm not saying I have created an empire or anything, but by the time I was 35, I had my house, I had my car, I had my basic investments in place to take care of my basic needs for the rest of my life. And it has nothing to do with blogging. Blogging was happening on the side, more as a hobby, more as a fun thing. Like I said, a lot of the commercialization part would come later. And now, what helped me persevere is the fact that this is something that I enjoy doing. This is something which is my sacred space. My blog is my sacred space. It's a sacred space that I have created. And it has given me a lot in my life. I may not have monetized it like a lot of super bloggers like you and a lot of other bloggers. But it has given me something much more than what money can buy. Given me a lot of influence. It has given me a lot of credibility. It has given me a network. It has given me the kind of respect and love that no money can ever buy.
Of course, I think the fact that you can reach so many people and teach them and speak with them is in itself a very big thing.
Yes.
And especially for someone like you who is truly passionate about it and not just in it for the money. Like nowadays, people will start writing. They don't care about writing. They just want to make money. So there's a difference there. There's a quality difference there that those guys can't match.
Yes. In fact, when I conduct some workshops on blogging, I always say that be very clear. Are you in it for money or are you in it for passion? Because you can't do both. You can't balance the both. If you are in it for money, then you'll have to do everything that gets you money, which may not really be what you are passionate about. I would say my balance is definitely tilted towards passion, and that gives me the freedom to say no to a lot of money. But I would also admit that I'm in a position where I can say no to that money, or I have reached that state of life where I can say no to that money. For example, I'll give you an example. I'm in the travel space. We have a reasonable influence in the travel space. Most of the money in travel space comes from places like casinos, and we refuse to give them space on our sacred space. So, and that means I have to let go of a lot of money.
What do you mean it comes from casinos?
I mean, they give you sponsored content, advertisements.
Oh, okay.
Because they are making, even during pandemic, even during, they are the big money spinners in this business. There are others as well. I think we've worked with almost all kinds of tourism boards, hospitality brands, and anybody who's to do anything with travel, we've worked with them. But so those are the brands we agree with, so we work with them. So for example, I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian by birth and by choice. So I would not promote a non-vegetarian brand because my audience knows very clearly, they trust me. I will never do a surrogate, or I will never do anything which will kill that trust. So, but to be able to take those calls, your passion tilt has to be very, very strong. Or that absolute clarity has to be there, which also takes time. When you're in the beginning of your career or beginning of your blogging journey, most of the bloggers take time to figure out what their niche is. Most people don't know what their niche is and what they stand for. And if you don't stand for anything, you'll never be able to make a standing for yourself. Then you'll keep going with the waves. And I have seen a lot of waves coming and going in blogging. There are people who have gone up with the wave and they've come down with the wave because they were just following the wave. But I have chosen to stay at a stable state where, I don't really go up and down. I don't play the SEO games. I don't play a lot of trend games. but I choose to write about things and places which I think truly deserve the attention that they are not getting.
I see. So you're in it for the long run,
Absolutely.
and
I have
that
been
is, of
it.
course,
I like IndiTales is
visible like
probably the oldest
2004,
living travel blog in India. So
17 years.
yes.
18, now it's
Yeah,
2022.
September it will be 18. Yeah.
September, it'll be 18. It can start drinking.
Yes.
So, how did you get into traveling? How long have you been traveling for? And can you tell us a bit about your early trips? Because I was actually reading your book, Lotus in the Stone, and you talk about one of your first journeys, and it was when you were a kid,
Yes.
you were traveling to a village.
Yes. So my first solo trip, so to say, was probably when I was 6 or 7. And I grew up with my grandmother. So she sent me from the town we were living in to another town, which was maybe 30, 40 kilometers apart. But you had to take a bus, go there, meet my grandmother's sister and do whatever job it was to be done and come back. And I did that. And my grandmother is my biggest inspiration for traveling as well as for life. I still remember I was scared on that journey. And when I told her that I'm scared, and in Punjabi, she said, "Muh mein zuban to hai na," which means you have a tongue in your mouth. If you're stuck, ask people. And that's my motto. It's okay if I don't know. I can't know everything. If I don't know something, I'll go to the person who knows and ask and know it for the rest of my life. So that was indeed the first journey. But like I said, I grew up in different army cantonments. And I must say that I probably I received it in my genes. But inherently, I also believe everybody likes to travel. Most people like to travel. Some people are lazier and they don't travel, but most people like to travel. And I got a lot of opportunities to travel during my growing up years. I think I traveled a lot during my student days, during my early career, all through my working career of 12, 13 years in the corporate world. I took every opportunity to travel wherever I could. I remember I was in UK for 6, 7 months, and the first thing I did when I landed there was to buy the Lonely Planet. And every weekend or every Friday evening, I'll be out to a new place, exploring the new place and coming back.
I learned this last year how to travel. I think people complicate it too much where they think it's going to be a big deal to travel, but really it's as simple as buying a ticket and going.
Yes, sometimes you don't even need a ticket. In fact, all through the pandemic time, people have been calling me and saying, you must be traumatized. You must be, it must be very difficult for you because you used to travel so much. I said, no, I'm perfectly fine because I know if I want to travel, I can just take a walk around my own city and find 10 new things during every walk. And in fact, one of the biggest feedbacks that I get from my blog is that I have been born and brought up in this city, but I never knew this about my city till I read about it on IndiTales. So there is a lot that is around us. It is not necessary to buy a ticket and go to an entirely new place. If you live in a big enough city, if you live in a Delhi or a Bombay or a Bangalore or a New York or a London, you can spend a lifetime exploring those places. If you live in South Delhi, Old Delhi is another world. The same goes for many areas of any big city anywhere in the world. If you live in a small city, you can just take a bus to the next town and there's so much to explore around you. And if you live in places which have been inhabited for a very long time, they have layers and layers and layers of stories to unravel.
So it's as simple as just going out there, talking to people, and exploring new places.
Taking a walk.
And taking a walk and the bus. So, what are the most interesting places you visited that maybe change your perspective and were different from what you expected?
Okay, so two things. One, the question I refuse to answer is tell us your top 3 places to visit or 5 places to visit, because anybody who's visited 5 places can tell you 5 places to visit. Somebody who's visited 500 or 5,000 places will never be able to tell those 5 places. One.
So the librarian's dilemma.
Yes.
Which is your favorite book?
It's not a dilemma. It's that the beauty lies in your own eyes, or in your own curiosity. In this case, the curiosity with which you go to a place is what decides your experience. It's like you can go to the most wise person on earth, but if your questions are silly, you'll get silly answers. If your questions are profound, you'll get profound answers. So the same is with destinations.
This is like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they ask them the meaning of the universe and the machine says 42.
Yeah.
And then they try asking the question.
Yes. So it all depends on what you ask for. The questions decides. That's why when you look at Indian scriptures, when you read of them, they are always the discussion or the conversation is driven by the person who's asking the question. That's why an interview is driven by the person who's asking the question. The kind of question you ask is the kind of answer you will get.
All right, let me frame the question differently then. So if you had to travel India for, let's say that you are someone from abroad, let's say that you're an American and you can speak English, and you had, say, 2 weeks and you had to visit some places in India, what would your recommendations be?
Okay. So again, I always say...
and by the way, I'm going to repeat this question for 1 month and 3 months. So
okay,
just
sure.
If you want to process the answer before.
So, no. So don't worry about that. My answer is pretty universal. So it depends on where you are coming from. For example, right now, I live in a place which is right next to the coast. The beach is 300 meters from my home. So for me, any beachy destination is like, okay, big deal. Right? But I know when people come from Delhi and they look at the sea and they go crazy. And it's understandable, perfectly understandable. So what you are looking for, what is right for you depends on where you are and what you are seeking again. If you live in a landlocked place, then going to sea is going to be a different experience for you. If you live in hills, going to sea is going to be a different experience, and vice versa. So first of all, that. But having said that, there are a few things. I have a blog post on 12 must-have experiences in India, which are very, very uniquely Indian.
I will link it in the description, but go ahead.
Yes. So one of the experiences that India is very, very well known for, and for which we have been attracting pilgrims since ages, and every traveler worth their salt has visited, is our spiritual destinations. And in that, I think Varanasi tops the list because it has been attracting people and it has so much to offer to any kind of traveler. So that should be one. Or any of the ancient pilgrimage places you can visit. You can visit Haridwar, Rishikesh, you can visit Kanchipuram in the south, or Ujjain in the central India, or Kamakhya in the eastern coast, in the east. So any of these, so I would say, because the kind of experience these places offer is pretty unique. You may not find that kind of experience outside of these centers. Anyway, India gets a lot of spiritual tourists who come in the hope of getting enlightened. And a lot of them choose to settle here or follow their Guru Parampara here. So that's one. Second, you can also experience the true blue, luxurious hospitality of India in places like Rajasthan. Rajasthan is one state which has maintained its heritage palaces and forts, and they still give you that experience. We cannot be kings and queens in our times and in our lives, but for a small amount of money, you get to experience that luxury. And believe me, I have traveled in a lot of places outside India. When it comes to luxury quotient, we're probably at the top. It's just that our branding is not there. We are not seen as a luxury destination, but
As a luxury
yes, but the
destination.
kind of luxury quotient that we offer. I was on this luxury train called Deccan Odyssey, and there are 5 such luxury trains in India. Very costly, very expensive, very exclusive, but you will feel like a queen. I mean, I felt like a queen. A red carpet was laid out on the station. I had a personal butler to attend everything. There was, it was absolute luxury to dine on the train, to have everything, performances on the train, and going destination to destination. So there are a lot of these things that I recommend people should do. Then, of course, wellness and wellness tourism is really upcoming. Most of the west coast in India offers it. Those are good, but I would also say places like Odisha, which have a beautiful melange of culture, be it in terms of handicrafts, handlooms, culture, performing arts. If somebody can attend a dance festival, we have them around this time of the year, December, January. A lot of dance festivals happen in a lot of heritage spaces. You can see them. And then, of course, we have about 40 odd World Heritage sites. See them. Go and see tigers in central India. Um, uh, uh, the jungles of Bandhavgarh, Kanha, Pench. These are the places where you can see tigers up close and personal. You can see them. I have seen tigers in Pench.
Is that safe?
Yes, yes. You go with the jungle guards and you go with all precautions. I mean, I've seen them. You can see my videos on of Collar Valley. She just passed away 2 days back. She was the queen of Pench National Park. She gave birth to 29 cubs, and I have seen her walking with her 2, 3 cubs, and those videos are there on IndiTales channel. And
I will find it and put it in the description as well.
yes. So, and these are the things that you'll see only here. I mean, wildlife. You want to see single-horned rhinos, then go to the jungles of Assam. In Kaziranga, you will see single-horned rhinos. Actually, you find them all along from Assam to Jaldapara in West Bengal to the Terai region, which borders the Nepal. But the easiest to see is in Jaldapara in the North Bengal, or Kaziranga in Assam. These are some of the experiences. I mean, there's so many of them. I would say go and visit one of the art villages. We have these artisan villages around the country. Again, zero focus on them, but we have a full section where we've covered a lot of those artisan villages. For example,
what is an artisan village?
Okay, I'm coming to that. So, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, there is a village called Kuchipudi. Now, you probably know that Kuchipudi is one of the 7 classical dances of India, which comes from Andhra Pradesh. But do you know Kuchipudi is actually the name of the village from which the dance comes, and everybody in that village is engaged in something to do with
Dancing.
the dance. Yes. So either they are dancers, or they are teachers, or they are costume makers, or they are jewelry makers, or they are musicians, and they make everything themselves. Their instruments, everything. Everybody in that village is involved with the Kuchipudi dance. Similarly, in Chhattisgarh, I've been to a village called Ektaal, where everybody makes these brass murtis. So everybody in that village makes these beautiful brass murtis. National award-winning people living in that village. The whole village does that. And such villages are found across India. Across India. And I have a lot of them covered on IndiTales.
That is very interesting. I would love to know how these guys sustain themselves, because
they are doing.
I have never heard any of these people.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. And that's why we work. That's why I choose to highlight them. So, for example, let me tell you, there is this village called Amroha in UP, in Western UP. That whole village is engaged in making, it's actually a town now. They make these percussion instruments, dohlaks and tablas.
Mm-hmm.
And anywhere you go, if you see a dholak or tabla, it's probably come from Amroha, the whole village. Now you'll think how they are sustaining themselves, but what you don't realize is that they are from that cluster, they are running that global business. They are supplying everywhere in the world. They have a beautiful supply chain. They have simple people living everybody's working from their homes. They are creating things and they are supplying to the world, not just India. They have an absolute sustainable
Interesting.
business. I have covered many such villages around India. So for example, I did a story on Firozabad, which is the biggest bangle maker in India. The whole city is engaged in making glass bangles. So if you see any woman in the country wearing glass bangles, it's probably come from there.
That is very interesting. I had never heard of this before.
Yes, and this is what I call industrial tourism as well.
I think in this case, your blog is like one of the best places. Someone who wants to learn more about and visit India, he can find more offbeat places to visit, which will not have big crowds and would be interesting to see Indian culture and more.
Yes. So, for example, we've collaborated recently with the Central Silk Board and Silk Mark of India. And we've done a few stories on silk. So I visited the silk clusters and we wrote stories about how silk sarees are woven and how the whole industry is. And believe me, when I wrote about Banarsi sarees, there's so many people writing to me saying that, we know there is a Banarsi saree. We didn't know there are these 20, 30 different types of sarees. Now we know, and now we'll be more careful in picking up sarees, or how the zari is made. Zari is real gold and real silver, and how that is woven into a piece of cloth. So, and finding the historical references to that. So, we're trying to create an impact which is both knowledge and which enriches the lives of our readers.
Anuradha, let me make this question a bit broader now. Let's say that someone comes to India with an e-visa, which is like a free visa they can just apply for on the internet and then fly to India and they will have a visa.
Yes.
And this is free. And let's say that they plan to stay in India for 3 months. Where would you start? See, you mentioned Rajasthan is a great place for luxurious stuff. So let's say that they land in Jaipur.
So I would say spend your 1 month in Rajasthan. Rajasthan has many things to offer. It has a beautiful bird sanctuary. It has the forts and palaces. It has beautiful water management systems which you can study. It has great food. If you want, you can extend it to either Gujarat on the southern side, or a little bit towards Madhya Pradesh, where you can cover things like Gwalior and Khajuraho, and see a bit of that culture as well. So 1 month is just good enough to cover these places. What I do not recommend people is that you keep flying from one corner of the country to another, just to tick off those top 10 things. Stick to a radius of maybe 500 kilometers, or maybe 300 kilometers from wherever you want to base yourself. Again, it's a function of time. For example, I would not recommend Rajasthan if you're coming in summers. You can't go to jungles if it is monsoons. So those kind of things you have to factor in.
I see. So in the summers, you would not recommend Rajasthan,
It's very
but say
hot.
a place like
Very hot.
Kashmir,
So,
Jammu and Kashmir should be better.
Jammu Kashmir is popular in the sense it's well known, but it's also not very stable. What we forget is that Indian Himalayas in India stretch from Ladakh till Arunachal Pradesh. And I would suggest go to places like Sikkim, which is one of the most beautiful states in India. It's small but beautiful, 100% organic state. Very beautiful. Small state, but very beautiful state. Arunachal Pradesh, you can get all that. You can go to the Lahaul Spiti area of Himachal. You can go to Uttarakhand, of course. And all that. So Himalayas stretch across the breadth of North India. They're not just in Kashmir. And
Correct.
within Jammu and Kashmir also, Jammu has a lot of things to offer, which we tend to somehow the Hindi films
Forget.
have put so much focus on Srinagar, which is beautiful, no doubt it's beautiful, but it's just one small valley. Ladakh is very, very beautiful and very, very unique. It's one of the few cold deserts in the world. So explore those areas as well.
I see. What about South India? Let's say that someone, say, if they're in for 3 months, let's say they spend 1 month exploring Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, like you mentioned, and then they fly up north and they check out Sikkim, they check out Himachal Pradesh and the locations in that area. What about coming down south? Then, because to cover India, we have to also cover the
We
southern
can
part of
do,
the
like I
country.
said, don't do it all in one trip. So, for example, the Lahore Spiti trip that I'm telling you, to do that whole driving trip, you need at least 15 days. I took 17 or 18 days to do that trip. It's not, so these places are not very easy to navigate. It's not like you make a flying visit and come back. But in the south, but I'll come to south, Karnataka has a lot to offer. It again has a lot of forests. It has a lot of heritage sites. The Hoysala temples are simply beautiful. Tamil Nadu again has a lot of stuff to offer. Kerala is, of course, well known and it's well promoted and well known, and it receives a lot of tourists. So sometimes I find it gets more than its fair share of tourists. So and because of that, what happens is that when you get too many tourists, the place starts to behave for the tourist, losing its original essence.
It becomes a tourist town, basically.
Yes, it becomes a tourist town.
Are all these places English friendly? Because most people who are listening to this podcast are not going to be people who can speak Hindi or any local languages.
So that is not a problem, because any tourist place anywhere in the world always gears up for the tourists. So, for example, I live in Goa, which receives a lot of Russian tourists. So, if you go to the areas where tourists come, almost everybody speaks Russian. If you travel to Banaras, where a lot of South Indians go, everybody speaks Telugu or Tamil. So language is never a barrier. And in India, everybody understands basic English. They all understand the basic conversational, or what I call operational English. You may not be able to converse and have conversations, but everybody understands that. So I don't see, for English speaking people, it is definitely not a problem. But for people who do not speak English, they may have to struggle a little bit. And even there, it depends what language you are speaking. So, for example, if you speak Spanish or Portuguese and come to Goa, you're perfectly fine.
Spanish and Portuguese. Oh, because it used to be a Portuguese colony.
If you speak French and you are in Pondicherry, you are perfectly fine. So it depends.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, for example, I was saying that if you are a Tamil speaker in North India, you have the same problem. Or if you are a Hindi speaker in South India, you have the same problem. So I really don't see. We all travel to places where we don't speak language. And that is one of the experiences of travel, to be able to converse without the barriers of language. Everybody learns it. It's not a rocket science. Everybody learns it easily, organically.
I see. There's a big myth that, or at least what I feel is a myth from my experience, that India is unsafe for women. And if you go on the internet and you look on like boards which will give you recommendations on cheering India, they will often mention that India is unsafe for women. But in my experience, this has not been the case. And since you have been traveling solo for so long, what has your experience been?
It is the biggest myth, and I have been talking about it for many years now. India is, at worst, India is as safe or unsafe as any other place in this world. It is definitely safer than many of the places in the Western world. And for me personally, as an Indian, it is my home. It is the safest place. I have never faced, and if you go on internet, you'll find a lot of my talks that I have given at places like National Women's Summit, and I have spoken about this, that India is, I'm not saying that no wrong things happen here. Things happen. But are they sporadic? Are they exceptions or are they a rule? They are definitely an exception. They get highlighted far more than they get highlighted elsewhere in the world. If you go simply by statistics, India is nowhere in the top countries for crime against women. Nowhere, if you go purely by statistics. And another big myth, which is not directly related to travel, but indirectly it is, 97 to 98% of the rapes that happen, they happen within the family and known circles, not with the strangers, which means you are far more safer amongst the strangers than within your family and friends. And globally, I'm talking about globally. So India is not safe is a big, big myth. And you can speak to any woman traveler. And today there are a lot of women travelers in the country. They will tell you the same. But I also, when I say this, I also put a small disclaimer that, again, the basic philosophy, what you give is what you get. You as a traveler also have to be responsible and sensitive to the place you are going to. You have to be respectful to the people you are visiting. If you go with a condescending attitude, which a lot of times urban people tend to do in the rural settings, you are going to get that back in some form and shape. You have to be respectful to the people. You have to be grateful to them for allowing you in their space. You have to be sensitive to their cultural notions. You can, for example, you can wear anything you want to wear to a nightclub or to a beach, but you can't apply. You can't expect people to not to react to the same kind of dressing when you go to a village. Anything that makes you stand out will attract attention, attract undue attention. So you have to be sensitive to that. It's the same, and it's not one way. It's the same. If you wear a heavy Kanjivaram sari and go to the beach to swim, you're going to also attract attention because you are an exception there. So,
so fit in with the
you
crowd.
have to fit in with the crowd, and that has not just it decreases your vulnerability. It also let people open up to you. You tell people that we are interested in you. We're trying. You speak a few words in their language, and people in general, they open up their hearts to you. In general, people in this world are far, far better than what the media would like us to believe.
I think the Western media in particular is very biased against India because they will publish like outright lies. So I remember seeing an article where they concluded that India was among the 10 worst countries for women. And the way they concluded that was they sent a survey out to a bunch of people who had never even visited India. And they asked them, what countries do you think are unsafe for women? And then they just said, these are unsafe for women.
Yes.
So it had countries like the US in the list, in the top 10, and no African countries. And, so it's really a big bias against India, in my opinion.
So in my younger days, when I was not married, and I was a single, independent working woman, I have lived in many, many cities of India. I have lived in US. I have lived in UK. And I have rented houses there and lived. Only in US and Houston, to be precise, I was told by the company I was working for not to take houses in certain localities because they are not safe. Only there have I seen my team members being robbed in broad daylight to take a gold ring that they were wearing, or laptops being stolen from our cars. In London, I was told certain tube stations I should not go to after it's dark. I have never been told that in India. I have never, and I'm talking about the days when I was single and I was working independent. I've rented houses in Bangalore, Gurgaon, Noida, the notorious places. Nobody has ever told me don't take a house in that area. That's not safe for women. So India is absolutely safe. And believe me, there was a survey of 15 women from India, 15 women journalists from India participated, and they said India is the worst country for women travelers. I have tagged them on Twitter and I have asked them, please tell me incidents from your personal life where you felt unsafe. I have 20 incidents from my life where I can say that when I did not sense a danger and somebody sensed a danger around me, people have created a shield around me and protected me. I've on record put those in my videos. So please tell me, where have you felt unsafe, and what is your justification for saying that? Nobody has responded to me. So you have to understand, and these are the people who actually never step out on their own. They probably step out with 4 bodyguards around them, and then they say it's unsafe. But yes, of course, you have to be very, very, as independent traveler means you have to be a very responsible traveler. And as long as you are respectful to people, the people will give you far more than you can ever give them.
Hey, I can attest to that. I was visiting this village here in India. It's actually not that far away from where I live, and I was with my friend, and we were just walking by, and this village is like a very, very small village, so there are no restaurants there. So what we were doing is we were eating these medaki snacks you get, which are like, I don't know what it's called. Like, it's a circle, and then it's fried, and it has this filling inside it. It's like a mini kachori. So we were eating this stuff for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's funny because, I do talk about not eating fried foods on my channel, but there was literally nothing.
That's okay. Survival, you have to eat.
Yeah, there was nothing in that village. And some guy just saw us eating that. And he invited us to his house and he fed us. So this was an old guy, and him and his, family, they gave us tea. And then when we were coming back to where we were staying, another guy stopped us and he gave us a full lunch. So he gave us like bhindi ki sabzi and rice, and he was not even like miserly about it. He actually bathed our food in ghee, and he refused to accept money. And then he was showing us his cow, and he gave us fresh milk from his desi cow, not the A1 foreign breed cow, but actual desi cows. And the milk was also really delicious, and he refused to accept any money whatsoever.
That's I have a post by a woman biker who's a friend, Shilpa, and she did a solo bike trip around India and touching every state of India. And she has so many experiences of kindness on the road that she has faced. She met with an accident at one place and she was hosted by a family locally there. They took care of her. She broke her leg and she had to rest wherever she is. And they just hosted her. And she has so many stories to share of the kindness that she got on the road, literally everywhere in India. Literally everywhere. And all of us have these stories. It's just that the people who are, I think we give too much importance to Western media. That's it.
I do think that it's a good thing the Western people itself are noticing that their media is lying to them. And that is true even here. All medias are lying to everyone.
Yeah, so,
it's what they do. It's what they do.
So that's again, so I would say media is also a content business, pretty much like the business we are in. And it takes a lot of strength to say that we will not lie, because you get paid a lot to lie. So it's easy. It's very easy money. And if you go and talk to journalists in smaller places, and I've sometimes been on media trips with people like these, and they will tell you they get paid not to write stories more than what they get paid to write. So, it's a content business. There are too many players, and it's easy to make money, and it's easy to be on top by paying money.
Speaking of money, let me change the topic a bit. How much does it actually cost to travel India? Is it expensive or not? Because if you take the cost of an e-visa is free. And your biggest cost, in my experience, is likely to just be the plane ticket.
So plane ticket.
Maybe I just miss sleeping in like cheaper places.
Yeah, so it depends. Again, it depends. If you are in your 20s and you can backpack, then it's damn cheap. I mean, it's probably the cheapest place to be in. If you have, if you are in your 40s, 50s, and you want a comfortable luxury life, then you can spend as much as you want. So if you do not have money or do not have much money, you can always get into volunteering, or you can do some odd jobs and make basic money to pay for your rent or food. I don't think India is not at all expensive for backpackers. So I would say it has the range. You can have the lowest minimum quality of living or cost of living, and you can have the costliest hotels in the world.
A normal hotel, these hotels are also not expensive at all, especially by Western standards. For example, like if you go to any tourist town, you can find a decent place to stay, like not a bad or cheap place, but a decent one for like $40 a night. And $40 a night isn't a lot of money at all.
Yes. $40 is a decent money. Harsh, I just want to stop you for a minute. I don't see this this wave of sound. I see it only on your speaking, not on my.
Don't worry.
Okay, right?
It's probably should be getting recorded. Yeah.
Okay. You want to check that?
There's nothing I can actually do to check it live outside of stopping the podcast. But I see that your local backup size has been increasing up to 45 MB. So it's probably getting stored. Don't worry about it.
Sure. Carry on then.
Yeah. So $40 a night is actually not expensive at all. And if someone wants to go cheaper, and these places aren't like bad at all, even you can stay for like $25 a night in most places in the country. And they're decent. Like they aren't luxury by any means, but it's a great, safe place to sleep for $20 a night.
Well, in the tourist destinations, you can find something as cheap as $10. You have dormitories, which are decent. You have shared facilities, but that's it. If you just need a place to sleep, then it really doesn't matter. So you can go as cheap as that. I mean, I know people who have traveled, who have done this experiment of traveling on $10 a day or $20 a day or $50 a day, and they've pretty much easily survived.
Yeah, India is very cheap by Western standards. I've heard of people who come here for getting a surgery, and apparently they can fly to India, get their surgery, then tour India, then go back to their home country like the US, and it's still cheaper.
Yes, so dental tourism, medical tourism is coming up in a big way. And but I mean, the moment it comes in a big way, the cost advantage will go away, of course. But I would not like to say India is a cheap country. I would say India allows all kinds of travelers. Your money is not a deal breaker. If you do not have money, we have places to accommodate you. If you have money, we also have the world's costliest properties. Places like Umaid Bhavan, some of these lake palaces in Rajasthan, or even properties in tea gardens, even in backwaters. We have some of the most costliest experiences in the world, the luxury trains that I spoke about, and everything in between. So I do not want this labeling of India is a cheap place. India has a space for every kind of traveler, irrespective of your budget. So it doesn't say, for example, there are destinations where you cannot go if you don't have the right amount of money. But India says you want to come to India, you come to India. We have, irrespective of your budget, we have something for you.
What can be done to make our trips more enjoyable? Because I've had this experience where, for example, I was visiting a temple, and this was when I was much younger, and I didn't know anything about the temple. So for me, I was just going there, seeing it, and then coming back. But I noticed that, like, at least in the recent destinations that I have visited, I did some research on the history, and then that place suddenly becomes more magical. You understand why it was built, why it is the way it is, why these architectures exist, etc. So, what do you think of this, especially since that you've traveled so many places and you are more familiar with Indian scriptures than I am?
Yes. So this is how I plan. I recommend planning your trip. Is that you research the destination. You will come out with. I mean, today there's so much information on the internet that any destination you Google, you will find 50 odd things to do, and you can't do 50 things unless you shift to that place. You'll have to choose some of them. So say let's say you're traveling for 3 days or 5 days, so you see what you can fit in. You can locationally split your trip, saying that I'm going to be in north one day, south one day, central part one day, or whichever way you want to structure it, and say this is what I want to see, and this trip, this is what I want to eat, this is what I want to visit, this is what I want to do. But but the bigger recommendation I have is that always leave some empty, unstructured space to let the destination surprise you, to show you its magic. And the magic happens in those unstructured spaces. If you fill every minute of your uh, time in the destination, then you'll be just ticking off things. But if you allow that time, just sit in the corner of a street or in a cafe or on a beach or just in a marketplace, observe, talk to people, you will invariably discover something that nobody else has. That is the magic of travel, and you have to allow that to happen.
I see what you mean there. And, you know, a lot of people, they plan the itinerary so much that they just don't leave space for the magic. It becomes like a machine. I go from X place to Y place, and I come back, and I didn't really enjoy it much because I had to immediately go somewhere else.
Yes. And if you leave something, then it hurts you. Oh, I had to. So leave some space. So I would say plan 50, 60%, 70% maybe, 30% leave the space for finding out something.
I have special experience about when you leave something, it hurts you, because this is about, say, 12, 13 years ago when I was maybe 13 or 12 years old. We went to Gangotri with my family. You know Gangotri,
Yes,
right? It's
yes,
the origin of the
yes,
Ganga.
yes,
And it was very cold there. It was so freezing cold. And I remember my parents, they buy these small plastic containers and
yes,
take the water from the
yes,
Ganga
yes,
home. And you have to step inside the Ganga to do it.
yes.
And the reason I did not step in the Ganga was because it was so cold. It was so cold that I couldn't remove my shoes and step inside. And I really regret not doing that. I think I've always thought that maybe it's like, in my fate, it's that I will go here again and then I will do it, maybe with my children.
Yes. There is a time for everything. There have been, I mean, I don't know if I should speak about it, but there have been times when I have been wanting to go to a destination, and everybody has these destinations that you've always been planning to. You keep planning, it never happens. But then when you eventually go there, you realize why you did not come here earlier, because you were not prepared for that destination. And it's something that you will probably understand with time and age. So don't yeah, the nature has a bigger plan for you always.
In fact, I think it's one of the best journeys in India. I haven't traveled as much, but I do remember this particular. So I did the Char Dham Yatra as a kid, like
Right,
Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath, and
right.
Badrinath. And I still remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when my grandma was still around. So she wanted to do it. So we had gone with her. And I think that someone who is, say, Indian and wants to travel India more, this is a good place to start. What do you think?
Depends. I'm yet to go there. Can you believe it?
Oh, you're yet to
I'm
go
yet to
there.
go there. And I've been wanting, this is one of those destinations that I have been wanting to go. And I've been so many times till Rishikesh, but it's just not happened. So, everybody has a different journey. You can't really say this is the place to begin. You can't say. You can begin where you are standing.
True that, true that. Anuradha, this has been a great podcast so far. I've enjoyed speaking with you. I would love to hear what your biggest takeaways from your life and your traveling experiences have been, and what advice you have for the younger generation who's listening to this.
Well, I am very driven by learning. For me, a day is not complete till I have learned something new. And the day I do not learn, I meditated. So, for me, life is a journey in learning, and as long as I keep learning, I'm happy. You know, and travel is the biggest educator. It's the biggest university in the world. Nothing can teach you what travel can teach you. It can teach you from patience to perseverance to adaptability to what your college can teach you. You know, when you stand there, let's say in a pottery factory or in a bangle making factory, and you actually see everything, there's nothing that any textbook or any college can teach you. So for me, the biggest learning is travel is my biggest university, followed by books, which is like, if travel is first hand knowledge, books is second hand knowledge. So you're learning from somebody else's learnings. Whatever they have learned, they put it in the books and you learn it from there. But that is where I derive my inspiration and information from. So these are two of the things. If one thing I can say, I mean, I really don't like giving advices and preaching.
You've come to the wrong place.
I know. But if there's one thing I would say, always keep your goal bigger than yourself. Making money is not it should be one of the side goals. It should happen. If I can say it in Hindi, it will say, I would say, Saraswati ke piche bhago, Lakshmi ko tumhare piche aane do. So you run after learning and let the prosperity run after you. And I'm not saying it in air. I think to an extent I have made that happen. So you follow what you want to do and your goal should be larger than just you. And then the bigger things happen. If you just run after making money, you will make money, no doubt. But then you will not know what to do with that money. And then you'll look for avenues to spend that money and derive your sense of identity from that. I have this branded car and I have this branded clothes and whatever. But if your sense of purpose is much larger, that sense of purpose will give you identity, which no brand can give you, because brand to koi bhi kharid sakta hai.
So it's like using money as a tool and not being the tool used by money.
Yes. And also, like our Indian scriptures say, I should have the money. I should have enough money. I mean, our scriptures are very clear in saying you should earn, and you should earn a lot of money. But more importantly, I should have the wisdom to use that money.
I think we should do a complete podcast on Indian scriptures, because it is something that I'm very interested in, and a lot of people listening are interested as well. And you know a lot about them.
Yes, let's do it. How to read Indian scriptures. We'll do one podcast on that.
Awesome. When you mention that Chase, Saraswati and Lakshmi will come for you, it reminds me of a story that I remember reading this either in Chanakya Niti or my mother told me, where Lakshmi and Saraswati had a fight or something, and that's why you can't have both.
You can have both.
Is that a real story?
No, okay. So all stories are metaphorical, but you can have both. You can have both. They are two different. They're two different swarups of the same Shakti. They are not two different swarups. But if you run after one only, then the other one obviously feels left out.
Ah, I see. So I think the story was that Tinali Raman is offered two types of dahi, and one dahi is supposed to make him very smart, and one dahi is supposed to make him very rich. But he has to pick one, and then he goes and drinks both. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think a lot of lessons for life are covered in our scriptures, and
Yes.
it's a shame really that we don't know much about it.
Will don't be ashamed of things. I mean, that's one thing I say. Don't be proud and ashamed too easily. So we'll change that. I mean, it's something I only see it as something that we need to change, and I have seen that in my last 3-4 years of reading and sharing them on social media and with people who are associated with me. I know at least 50 odd people who have started reading now. So that's, I mean, if they can inspire another 50, that's it.
I see. So where can people find you? Where do they reach you? Your Twitter handle, your website. Please tell us more.
So if you can Google me, if you can remember my name, Anuradha Goyal, you can Google me. I'm pretty much Googleable. You can very easily find me. I have my own website, which is anuradhagoyal.com. And I have my travel blog, which is inditales.com, INDITALES.com. And I am on most social media with both these handles, Anuradha Goyal and IndiTales. So if you remember these two words, you can find me pretty much anywhere, everywhere.
All right, you guys. I will have the links in the description for you guys. And I also highly recommend reading this book by Anuradha. It is called Lotus in the Stone. I've read the book, and that's one of the reasons why I asked her for an interview. It's a very good book. It'll show you a lot about what India is about. And especially if you are Indian, because like Anuradha said, a lot of people will live in the same city forever and not know what the places in that city are. And that applies as a country too. People don't know much about India. And it's ironic that some of the people who know nothing about India are people who are living in India. So
You know what?
it's a good book.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I am interrupting you, but let me share what this book has been out for about a year now. And the feedback that I have from many youngsters like you is that they are feeling very emotional. A lot of them cried, and why? Because it's not a sad book. It doesn't have any sad story. It's a very happy book. Because they said we suddenly realize the richness around us, the prosperity around us, the, you know, how rich we are is what we realized after reading this.
Why do you think that is the case?
Because we've been ignoring what is in plain sight.
I see what you mean. This is a thought I've been having for many years now, all the way back from 2015. Was the fact that, when history is taught in schools in India, you learn about Chandragupta Maurya and Chanakya, and then you learn about all the Mughal invasions. And then we had invaders who ruled us, and then we had the British who ruled us. And I think at some level, because we spend our life learning Indian history as a series of other people who ruled over us, it kind of takes away from our national pride, because we tend to think that what is there to be proud of? Like our entire history, we were like under someone else's control. And one of the reasons why I use a Chanakya DP is because of his nationalism, of the fact that he united India for the first time.
He didn't unite India for the first time, but we don't. That's the first recorded time, the oldest recorded time that we know of. But what you're saying is true, but the way I see it is that all the history is taught to us from a Western eye. So they'll tell you that Sri Ram was somebody. Pallavas were somebody, Cholas were somebody. They don't tell you they were your ancestors.
Exactly.
Who was Chandragupta Maurya? He was my ancestor. They don't tell us, they don't say these are our temples or our monuments. They say they. So that is where the disconnect comes. We start seeing them as something belonging to somebody else. It is ours. It was built by our ancestors, and we should be damn proud of the fact that we have places like Ellora. I mean, it's the biggest wonder in the world. I have seen many other so-called World Heritage Sites. Nothing. Everything is absolutely pale in front of places like Brihadeshwara in Tanjore, Kandarya Mahadev in Khajuraho, or Ellora, Kailashnath Temple in Ellora. Absolute engineering marvels. In fact, I don't know if you've read the engineering marvels chapter in Lotus in the Stone. I have a full chapter describing the engineering heritage of India and why are we not teaching that in our engineering schools. What are we creating today? Glass and steel boxes?
Corporate structures.
When our heritage, even in residential houses, what are we creating today? No aesthetics, nothing. And look at our heritage. Every inch of the wall is telling a story and it is serving a practical purpose. Look at our ancient water management systems. They leave you spellbound. I have a podcast on water management system in Rajasthan, which is the most densely populated desert in the world. And you will be surprised at how they even took out water from the air. They knew how to tap that water and preserve that and use it intelligently.
Interesting. I was not aware of that. I need to learn more.
You need to read IndiTales.
I have read some articles. In fact, I'm going to read it more, and it's super interesting because all the locations are places I have never heard of. Because as a normal person, you hear about the popular places, but you don't hear about the less popular or the places which are not in the top 1%.
Let's bring them in top 1%.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, Anuradha, I will see you soon. This was a great podcast, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Harsh, and I wish you all the best.